Welcome to U.S. Rugby Happy Hour Live. Interviews with the biggest names in American rugby.
The New England Free Jacks, Major League Rugby champions. One-on-one to score.
Here are your hosts, Bill Baker and that other guy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is U.S. Rugby Happy Hour Live. We are back. We've taken a bit of a... What do you want to say? I don't want to say break, more of a sabbatical.
Yeah, it sounds fancy. Sabbatical. Yeah, we want a sabbatical.
It sounds smart, too. I think it sounds smart.
Don't ask me how to spell it.
Yes, exactly. But John Fitzy, good to see you. It's been a blast to catch up again. And listeners, Fitzy and I would communicate every so often about how we're doing, but we had some stuff to take care of professionally, personally, all this fun stuff. And we're back. We're back in a great time to come back on a show. So much going on right now. Some big championships happen this weekend, which we'll dive into here in a minute. But Fitzy, you're on the wrong coast now. You left my coast.
I know. I'm out here on the West Coast, Bill. I'm getting used to these new surroundings. I mean, the sun's still out. It's not 100 degrees like it is on the East Coast right now. So, yeah.
And you're going to get used to that whole sports schedule, too. Sports is interesting now. You know, it used to be when you were in D.C., 7 o'clock, 7:30, Nats game or something like that. Now it's 4:30 your time.
Yeah.
That's going to be, you have to get out of work every day at 3.
I mean, or just stop working. Why work? You know what I mean? I'm just going to be surfing anyway.
You're onto something there. California way. You're onto something. I unfortunately can't do that either.
No.
Yes. And I was away for a little bit also. We had some great fill-in guests, including one of our guests tonight, filling in for me a while back when I was getting my facelift. I decided to, get Botox and cheek implants. Just kidding.
You look young. You look like a young Will Hooley.
I think so. I agree with you. Wait, how much younger? It was like a 12-year-old Will Hooley? But anyway, yes, we are back. We're so excited to be doing this, and we're going to be kicking off our second half of season 5 here with this show, and we're going to start working our way into more and more shows. There's a lot of international matches coming up, men's international matches, and especially this weekend's matches. We have the MLR Championship on Saturday and the WER Legacy Cup on Sunday. So some really big rugby going on this weekend. And I don't know, there's probably no other rugby going on in the world that I care about other than these two matches. So it'd be great to talk about them tonight, which we will be doing with Wendy Young in a few minutes about the WER Legacy Cup. And then Ryan E. from the Fantasy Ruckers is going to jump in and help us with the MLR Championship preview as well. And we'll knock down all 4 of those teams. And hopefully we all feel better about who we think is going to win at the end of the show. So with that said, Fitzy, what do you think? Kick things off. Let's get our first guest up here.
Yeah, I'm anticipating a jingle of some sort.
That's right. If for new listeners, we do have a great jingle department, and it's our new way of introducing our guests. So here we go. Here's our first guest jingle.
And now, back on the show, someone in the know. The inaugural WER Legacy Cup is here.
Yeah.
Denver, New York, battle it out. Who wins it all? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the show, Wendy Young.
Oh my goodness. Gotta let that roll out. Wendy, come on. That was probably the happiest we've ever done a jingle before.
I mean, it's the 70s. It's exciting. Let's do some disco. It's awesome.
Absolutely. It's one thing we pride ourselves in. Not many shows you go on where they introduce you with your own personal song. So we like that.
Yeah.
Love it.
Next time it's going to go full 180 and it's going to be some death metal.
Headbanging, yeah.
Wendy, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming in. How are you?
Oh, so much. So thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be back on, and you guys are coming back after a long break and a well-deserved break. And like you said, 2 massive games this weekend.
Yeah, we're going to jump into that in just a second. And And again, we're going back. I mentioned it in our open. Thank you so much for being a co-host of this show when I was away, getting my face lifted.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I've been on the show and a couple of other shows before, but I'd never hosted one like that. So that was a new one for the resume, and it was exciting to do.
Cool.
Yes. Wendy, why don't we go back? Because we had you on right before the Women's Elite Rugby inaugural season kicked off. We were very excited about that. But let's go back to the very first game. How was it? What was the moment like? What was it? What did it feel like to get on the mic and announce the first Women's Elite Rugby match?
Yeah, it was really, it's an honor, and my co-host most of the season, Bree Kim, and then we had several sideline reporters throughout the league as well. Really exciting. We were on the ground, so I think that's a really important distinction for the game of the week. The announcers were on the ground, so we were there in New York at that beautiful stadium that the Exiles were playing at, and it was really nice. It was, a big crowd came out, so it was really cool to see the crowd, to feel the energy in the stadium, and then it was just awesome rugby. It was great rugby. It was a little. The ending with that penalty try that we, were able to explain to lots of new viewers, the intricacies and the excitement of rugby did make it interesting, but it was good rugby. It was fun. It was easy to announce. And I think it just really kicked off the league in possibly the best way it could have.
Let's talk about that call or non-call at the end of that game. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to, it was a fantastic game.
Let's rehash.
No, but I mean, awesome moment, right, to celebrate a big match. You've announced Major League Rugby games, you've announced other games, Women's Elite Rugby games. I mean, shoot, if I had to pin you down on your favorite moment so far of the Women's Elite Rugby season, could you do it? If you got to give me a couple, if you can't narrow it down to one.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Obviously the first game, right? So be able to do that, there's only ever going to be one. And so we were able to do that. The teams were able to start the league and get us off on the right foot. So that is wonderful. And again, can't thank the organizers and the women that stepped forward to make this league happen. And then there are some men behind the scenes as well too, but particularly the women that made this choice and the players that took the leap of faith, right? So we have to thank everybody for that. Other moments, I would say, the match where New York beat Denver, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in round 11. That was pretty amazing because Denver looked like they were just going to stomp everybody all the way to the final and take the gold and just laugh home, right? Like it looked like it was going to be an easy season for them. That was pretty exciting because it was again right down to the last few minutes. You weren't sure if they were going to be able to hold on, and that was really exciting. I think the other piece for me is watching, the Gemini and Tempest, who are on the bottom of the ladder, and they've struggled a bit this season. But the growth that we've seen is particularly from Tempest, where they held a couple of teams' feet to the fire. It was really exciting. We almost thought they were going to get their win 2 times or 3 times. But I really think that growth is what's really important. And it's not unlike Anthem over in the MLR, right? Where they're there, they're putting the work in every week, and they just can't get over the finish line. But they're going to do it eventually.
And let's talk about with this inaugural season, let's talk about the players for a second. Just generally speaking, players' skill level. Lots of talented players joined WER in the offseason from PWR as well. Rachel Johnson and Rick Kelter, of course, and many others. But those players mixed in with a lot of players getting their first professional contract. So was the overall level up to what the league was hoping for?
I think it was, it was pleasing to have a lot of those Eagles come home. Essentially, a lot of them are still going to play in the PWR, and they're working really hard to make those 2 schedules work together. You'll see that, next year when PWR has already announced some changes, that WER is going to reflect that and help those players be able to do that. They're also working really closely with USA Rugby High Performance to have those windows available. So we'll know when those Eagles will be off to camp, when they're not going to be available, all those things. And I think that's really important. It gives the teams, they have to work on their depth, right? And then they have to make sure that they can survive, as we saw a couple of teams struggled a bit when they didn't have those key players to rely on. But I think the level in general was exactly what the league was looking for. It is that step above club D1. And in particular, I think it's just a little bit of a step above the WPL. You saw players that were training twice a week. Now they're training 4 to 5 times a week, and they're doing video analysis, and they're going to the gym. So we're naturally seeing their strength, their power, their game IQ is all going up. So I think the experiment, if you will, professional rugby for the first time in the United States, I think it's gone very well for the first year.
And I loved, at least with the Boston Banshees, I know other teams do it as well, but the cross promotion they did with the sports teams.
Yeah.
Like the women's ice hockey team here in Boston. The Banshees showed up. They were treated so well, and the media as well in the news. So it's so good to see and great for the future. Was there other stuff like that as well that was just that was just cool to see the league do, especially in their first year?
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of that was team driven. I want to just give a shout out to some of the leaders on the teams that felt really strongly. The league supported all of it, of course, but there were definitely teams that were like, we're going to Pride, we're going to the Boston Fleet games, we're going to whatever, right? Like, we're going to go to every basketball game we can and get their name out there. And I think that really helped the league, and it helped build that excitement. And then particular, there's a couple of, I don't know what to call them, but fun Instagram accounts that have a different, I would say, maybe flavor to them, right? And they're bringing something that's exciting as well. So it's fan accounts in some cases, and then everyone knows Tiff, the Banshee, the chain-smoking, weird doll that is of the Boston Banshees, right? And I think they're also bringing some excitement to the league too in a different format.
For those who aren't familiar with some of those accounts, can you share them so that others can hear and follow?
Yeah, all of them. If you just go look up usually it's the second part of their name. So look up Exiles. There's like Exile Fans, and then Tiff is the only one that's really different because it's Tiff Banshee, but you'll still find them. Yeah. And then Onyx Rock is ONX instead of ONYX, how they spelled it. So there's just a couple, and then I think Gemini is Seymour Snake. So theirs is the snake that travels around Minnesota and does stuff. So they're a little bit funky, but if you go just look at the main accounts, they're usually listed somewhere in there. And in some cases, they're just fans that wanted to have their own account, and then there's others that want to shake up things and make things a little testy, I would say.
Each fan base needs to develop their own way of cheering, their own style. So encourage all of that, of course, right? Yeah. Obviously. Absolutely. Back to kind of piggybacking on Bill's question, the competition level. Early in the season, there were some high-scoring games or games where the margin got away, but there were also some tight games. But it seemed like as the season progressed that the game lines maybe got a little more competitive, right? Was that just that early part of the season just reflective of getting the players used to playing together, figuring out their style, all of the above? Or was there something else to explain, how the games got more competitive as the season wore on?
I think you're kind of hitting it right on the nail there. They more time together. In some cases, most of the coaches were the same. About half of the league, the coaches were the same, so the players were very familiar. And there was some movement of players where they relocated, from even a club team, a D2 team, and went up to the WER. But then, like New York's roster, very solid New York. Denver, very solid Denver, right? And so those players are used to playing together. There were some really young injection of talent. We had a lot of university players, particularly when the university window opened for the WER about halfway through the season. We picked up some really young, talented players, and I think that built in some energy and injection of talent as well. But I think it's time together, working out their systems. Coaches, when you can have a player 4 times a week as opposed to 2 times a week, you can really work on attack structures, defense structures. What is our lineout going to look like? You can just get those reps in, and then you could do video, break it down, just get more time together, and then you can really kind of put everything together. So I think you're right that it's all of the above.
Yeah, and real quickly, go Bill. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're doing the whole wavy thing. You go.
I talked my hands a lot. I don't know, but I was gonna talk a little bit about the excitement going throughout the season. The crowd, the attendance numbers looked strong. I guess from your point of view, Wendy, maybe in conversations you've had with some of the league executives, were they pleased with the attendance numbers?
Yeah, I think they're really pleased. I mean, they obviously have goals, right? They want to sell X amount of tickets per team and all of those things. And, some did really great. And I think others, they're going to need to work on that. But, WER held the record for women's rugby most attended for 4 or 5 weeks until that Kansas City United States game where Ilona Maher played, right? That one was 10,000. They blew it out of the water, but it was like 5,600 at their first match. That New York match had 5,600 people there. And then it held that record. Denver got really close. They had about 4,000 people for their opener. So that's pretty good rugby when you think about, USA matches, you'd have 2,000. I think the record was 2,200 for like a decade. So to double that in the first game of the WER, it's the right time for women's sports, but it's true that there's a market and people want to see rugby succeed.
I don't want to get too deep into the broadcast side of things because, first year quality, it's going to get better and better. but just briefly touch on the quality of the broadcast for this first league. And also, quick note, when I first saw the announcement before the season that DAZN was going to broadcast, like, how do you say that? And it wasn't until a month later where I did some work for DAZN. I was like, that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, no, I think it was a really interesting partnership, and I think the intent on both sides of the league and of DAZN was there. It just didn't quite work out. There were some technical issues. Some of the broadcast, our audio on the broadcast, we're talking away, nobody can hear us. There were some, video glitches, things like that. Things to be sort of expected for a first year. There's technical problems on the ground. We try to just work through them. Cameras go out, things like that. But, when your provider is having technical issues, that's a bit difficult. And so, halfway through the season, they did make a decision to, pause that relationship. And then they were down for a week, so we didn't get to watch matches for a week. But then the league was able to get local videographers at each home pitch and figure it out. And in particular at Lodi, Bay Breakers hadn't had a game all season. Really tough network down there. As far as like data and all of that was almost non-existent. So they went down there. I think they used a Starlink at that point to get signal to finally get that game up. But the teams did really well helping the league find videographers, and the league obviously found videographers. And in some cases, it was just a one camera, and it was just a natural noise. We would call that NATS, natural sound. And then others, they had graphics and things like that. So it varied across the board, but I enjoyed it. I would have liked to have been at the games and commentated them, or been remote and commentated them. But I think they did a good job putting a Band-Aid on a tough situation.
All right, Wendy, let's talk about it. The WER Legacy Cup this Sunday, June 29th at TCO Stadium in the great state of Minnesota. Also, Minnesota Vikings training facility, if I think I've got that right. Yep, of course, home of the Twin Cities Gemini. What can you tell us about this stadium? What can fans expect who are showing up in attendance? Yeah, give us the skinny.
Yeah, if you watch PR7s, they did that in 24, I believe. They had one stop there, so we kind of got a preview of what it could look like with rugby. I was lucky enough to just happen to be there for that one. It's a nice facility, like you said. It's Minnesota Vikings, so it's purple everywhere. They've been really great with the league. They've greened out the line, so it's a multi-purpose field essentially, but they've tried to make it to where the rugby line stood out, where some facilities charge a really large cost for that. The Vikings just were like, nope, we want it to look great. We want our stadium to look great. So really good partnership there. So I think that's really important, number one. It's about a 7,000 seat stadium, so it's a large stadium, but it's not quite a bowl, but it's one where the stands almost kind of creep over. So it's a nice loud stadium. So, it's not going to matter how many fans are there on Sunday. I know there's a bunch coming out, but it's going to be loud, which I think is really helpful for the players. And it makes great TV as well, as we know. But it's going to be a cool field. And, Gemini, they've always had a good presence that's come out, and Minnesota's got a lot of rugby. So we're expecting a lot of local rugby to be out and support.
Let's talk about Denver Onyx and New York Exiles. Obviously, your two top teams right now coming into Sunday's match. And I actually, before we really get deep into what they both offer in this match, I do want to go back to that second matchup of the season for them. All right, let's talk about that for a moment, because New York or Denver's loaded with USA Eagles. New York has a couple as well. So it felt like, which team is Denver? Is it the blowout team early in the season, or is it the 24-17 loss, and vice versa? Which team is New York?
Yeah, I mean, we always have to start the conversation there with that loss in round 11, that almost all of Denver's Eagles were away, and so were New York's, right? They were at camp getting ready for Pac-4, so they were away. So it was a totally different Denver side. Of course, they still have some Eagles. Carly Waters was there, and Maya Learned was there as well. So there were some players that were still there, as they moved through camps or weren't invited, or whatever the situation is there. But, it was definitely a different Denver side. We saw a couple of players playing in positions that we hadn't seen all season. Kristen Bitter played a lot in the centers. We started to see her at fly half. She also played some fullback. We saw, where usually it's Rachel Ericke and, your Brody's, in the locks, a couple new players there as well. So I think that probably was difficult for Denver, but, they have such a great coaching staff, Sarah Shabbat, and then they had Camarelle Farelli coming in, covering when Shabbat was away on her USA duties. So they almost really didn't skip a beat until round 11. And I think that was when, some injuries crept in. And then I think New York, when you talked to them early on, they had circled that match like really early on in the season. And we're like, that's the game. It doesn't matter what happens in the first game. We'd love to beat them. But they knew in the second game that they had the most time to prepare. They broke down the film. They really kind of found some of Denver's weaknesses and they exploited them. And so I think that's really the key there, is that New York did their homework as well.
Well, and also, as you know, New York didn't start the season off well.
Yeah.
And then won last 5 or 6, I believe it was. And these two teams also have the best kickers in the league as well through conversions. Yeah. Hawkins and Owens. What are the little things that both these teams have, again, that really maybe propelled them into this position? I think Denver, from the day one, I thought was set for this match. New York, for me, wasn't. I had other teams, at one point I thought Banshees were going to get there, and then here comes New York. So what were the little things?
Yeah, I mean, it was really exciting. I mean, New York left it to the last game of the season, right? They had to win and they had to wait for, Bay and all that. There was so much drama to get into the final. But I really think, when you look at New York's style of play, they're just get in it and they're stuck in it, right? They just get in there. They're kind of frustrating. They're really physical. They've got a great starting pack. And then they have depth on the bench as well. So they, you've got Pookie up front and then, Kayla Hunk and Clark also, that just are bruisers, right? They're so powerful and strong and they just come right at you. And not that no one else has that in the league, but I think they're just such straight runners and they play a lot in the middle of the field. And then it leaves a lot of space open on the outside. And they've got some speed in the back. I mean, Jetta Owens, top scorer of the league, right? She's doing fantastic. She just wants a little space and then she's going to burn through. And not to mention, she's got tons of speed with her, Erica Koulibaly, lots of teammates that can get around and, on Denver's side as well. But I think that's where I think the big difference is they're just really strong in that pack. They've got a great set piece also that they like to use. And then they're really momentum driven, right? So if they can get a swing or something that goes their way, a big hit, steal a line out, they really can build on that and punish teams. And they really enjoy a counterattack as well. So that kind of unstructured broken play is really where they thrive. Where it's almost the polar opposite of Denver, where they really want to be like, this is how we play. They don't really get outside of their attack structure very much. I wouldn't say it's predictable by any means, but that they're going to use their forwards and they like to carry the ball a lot. You mentioned Rachel Johnson, like she's going to carry the ball all the time, right? And then you're going to use some of your other forwards to get over the line and get the scores. And they've got a great kicker, like you said, Mackenzie Hawkins, who she always gets it in behind the defense and just turns that pressure over on them. But I also think that composure under pressure for Denver is really important. They have so much experience under their belt. They've done it before. They've won so many championships, so many Eagles. They just don't really get flustered. But if you can get them flustered, I think that's kind of where the key might be in beating them.
How to get them flustered? Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, Fitz, let me jump in real quick. So, like you said, Denver has all that experience, and both teams, as you know, have won a bunch of WPL championships. Yep. No more than Denver. New York has 11 players that played in every match this year. Is that what's helping them? The continuity of those 11 players, and not just those 11, but that's got to help.
Yeah, I think so. It's a cool stat. And, as we're preparing for the game this weekend, we are looking up a lot of those stats too. And Jamie Burke's been great as director of competitions to help with that. And then Jackie of Finland of the Rugby Breakdown's also been tracking it. So just want to give some credit there that there's a lot of work and a lot of scouring of data and RX to get that information. So love that. And I do think that's where a lot of the continuity is. And if you look at Diego and his coaching style, it kind of looked like he didn't have the right combinations in the beginning. We saw some starters that, ended up kind of on the reserve bench and they stayed there towards the middle of the season and then they got promoted back to starting. But I really think that's where you've got that core of 11 players, but then that bench is really, you'll just see that kind of lift almost from New York when those players come in. And I think that also is really important to their game plan of, you just can't, you're not going to get away. All 23 of those players are great on New York's side.
Yeah. I want to say something I wanted to talk more about Denver, but I know we've been going back and forth between the two teams. And like you said, Lerner was there for the last match against New York. They have, it blew me away. I was looking at some of the stats. I mean, 5 of the top 10 scores in the league are from Denver. And Bitter's right out there with number 11. It's just, they've got so much power behind them. So going into the final, Denver has to be considered the favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I think they absolutely are, right? Like you said, we've got just superstars on that team. Bitter and McKenzie both can score, and then they can convert. They've got great kicking off the tee. Koulibaly, I mean, just dynamite, right?
Yeah.
So good. Katie Broughton also really come into her own, I think, as well on Denver's side. So New York's got their hands full. They're going to have to contain all of those dangerous players. I mean, we haven't even talked about, Johnson again. You've got really talented players all over the place for Denver, and New York's just got a big feat on their hand to try to contain these dangerous players. And New York sometimes can be that second half team. And that's not how you're going to beat Denver. You're not going to be able to let them rack up 30, 40 points and then try to climb that hill back. That's going to be really difficult.
Wendy, you mentioned earlier maybe flustering Denver a little bit. Is that the you would think part of the game plan for New York to kind of hit at Denver? I mean, you figure why not, right? If you're facing a deficit like that, or longer odds, right, where Denver's considered the favorite. So if you fluster Denver, how do you do that then? Maybe that's the answer. The question I'm trying to get around to. How do you fluster this Denver squad that seems to be so strong?
Yeah, I think there's some key players there that you can fluster, right? I mean, obviously you're 9 and 10, right? So if you can get them under pressure, so that if it's going to be Carly, which we've seen several different scrum halves, not sure it's going to be Carly. We haven't seen the rosters come out yet, but she's one that you can sometimes get under her skin, and then she gets out of her game a little bit, right? So if they can get pressure on the scrum half and make sure that she doesn't have all the time in the world, she will go quick, right? So if they can just contain her, I think that's going to be one key. And then same thing with Hawkins or whoever it is, if it's Bitter at 10, getting those hits on that player and making sure that, if they can try to move the ball wide like Denver wants to do, they want to get it out to Koulibaly and out to Broughton. Containing that ball inside the inside center and outside center is going to be just key. I think that's really, really important for New York to try to do. But I mean, that's frankly tiring, right? Because then it's a rush defense. You're in their face all the time. You've got to make your one-up tackles. It's tough to do that for 80 minutes, but I think that's how New York's going to have to do it. They're just going to be really physical and stand toe-to-toe with another physical team as well.
All right, Wendy. Are you willing to make a pick?
I've already made it twice on. Yeah, I've done it.
The other ones,
yeah. So I mean, Denver is by far the odds are with them, right? But I really feel like New York has put it together. They've done the work. I really just think it's going to be who shows up on the day. And if we've got all the Eagles on Denver's side, it's going to be a tough one for New York. But I think New York has a real shot at this. I think if Boston didn't have a crumble at the end of their season, I think they were going to be in this. But I think New York has a shot.
Well, Wendy, last thing here. Who's calling the game and how can people watch the game?
Yeah, so the game, you can watch it on the WER website, just like they have for the last couple of weeks. And then it's been a little up and down. I've had some personal family emergencies in the last couple of days. That's why I'm in a different place tonight. I am really hopeful that I'll be there on Saturday or on Sunday. But definitely Bree will be there. Bree Kim will be there for sure. If not, I think there's going to be a little bit of shuffle. Bree will move into play-by-play. If I can't make it back, she'll be there. And then Jamie Burke might have a little co-commentary going on. And then Lauren Khalil will be on the sideline. So if I can't make it, then Bree, she's great. She's going to do an awesome job. But I hope to make it out there. We'll see. We've changed my flight, so fingers crossed. I should be there, but we'll see.
Well, good. Well, we really do appreciate you jumping on with us, and I hope everything's okay. And take care of all that. And hopefully you can make it out Sunday, and we'll see you on there.
Yeah, super excited. And I mean, I think this is just the pinnacle for the first ever women's professional rugby season. And man, this is just a good one. And I hope everybody tunes in for some great rugby on Sunday after they watch the MLR final, of course, on Saturday.
Of course. All right, Wendy, thanks again, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good night.
You too. All right, that was Wendy Young, and we have a third co-host who's jumping in there for a second.
Yeah, he's telling me all the things I'm saying that are stupid. So.
Oh, I think our next guest wants to do the same thing, but
I haven't found it yet.
So anyway, the listeners, if you're tuning in late, we just had Wendy Young on to talk about the WER Legacy Cup in Minnesota coming up on Sunday. So watch both Saturday and Sunday, and don't kill yourselves on Saturday watching the game and you're in the third half festivities. Make sure you have some energy left to watch the WER Legacy Cup. There's a lot of great quality USA women players on these teams, future USA players, Eagles, great, new professional players as well on these teams. So just check it out. And it seems like they've done a lot of great things, Fitzy, to make this inaugural season go off well,
Yep. Absolutely. It should be a good, entertaining match to cap off at their inaugural season.
Yes. All right, let's move on. We got a lot more to talk about. We got another big game a day sooner in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. You heard me right. The smallest state in the country is going to have the biggest match on their soil. Wow, I just came up with that. That was brilliant. And we do have someone to talk about it with us. And as normal, here's our introduction. Oh, we have to make sure of the sound.
Another finals on the horizon. Major League Rugby Championship in Rhode Island. Teams are set. Sabercats, hats, free jet. Hustle! Who wins it all? Does Houston get there first? Or does New England three-peat? Let's discuss with Fantasy Rockers, Ryan Yay.
Whoa, and there you go.
Whoa.
Pretty good. That's pretty good. I don't know who your guy is, but you gotta let me know who's putting that together, because that's some stellar stuff.
If you got to ask, then you can't afford it.
There you go. That's fair enough. Fair enough. Set me straight.
Neither can we.
What's going on, guys? What's going on, fellas?
Not much. Ryan, how are you?
Doing good. Couldn't be much better with what is, I guess, like you said, Bill, very creatively, the biggest game in the smallest state coming up here.
That should have been the motto. That should have been the logo.
You're right.
So those of you who don't know yet, we've been plastering all over social media and elsewhere. The Fantasy Rockers and American Rugby Rising, also U.S. Rugby Happy Hour Live. But yep, there you go.
Oh,
Will be, yes, we will be on the road.
I gotta get one of those shirts.
Well, you got to show up at FanFest. We will be at the FanFest Friday night and Saturday morning. Friday night, we're having a meetup of you listeners and friends at the Guild in Pawtucket, which is not far from the stadium. And about 7 o'clock, we're meeting there. And come on out, have a pint, share with us. We've got merchandise. We've got T-shirts that Ryan just showed off. We've got stickers. We've got all kinds of stuff. And we're giving away a pair of tickets and a USA jersey to both USA men's matches in Charlotte. That's right. So you show up that night, you sign up. You can. We're going to announce other ways to do it too, to make sure everyone has a chance and you have the chance to win it. So we're going to have a blast. And then Saturday morning, Ryan, I'm going to let you lead this one. What are we doing Saturday morning?
Yeah, we're bringing the show on the road. RHODE, show on the road. With you, American Rugby Rising, and us, the Fantasy Rockers. We get to host a fun little 45-minute pregame show following right in the middle of the festivities that are happening on Saturday. Rugby 101 starting earlier in the day. Bookending us after that is the kickoff show, the pregame show with Will Hooley and Alex Corpusero. And then we'll be smack dab in the middle there talking a little bit about our perspective about the big game that I'm sure we'll touch on here. But we couldn't be more excited to be part of the festivities, to be out there right front and center with all the fans out there that will be enjoying the championship just as much as we will be. It's going to be fun. So, yeah. Come out Friday. Again, got lots of giveaways. Got the shirt that will be given away. We got a handful of those while limited supplies last, Fitzy. So I don't know if there'll be one left over for you, but
it's got to be a schmedium somewhere you can send it away.
There you go. And then, of course, everything that Bill listed there. And then Saturday morning, join us for the show, and then we'll be hopping right in to enjoy what should be some good rugby later on in that afternoon with everybody else.
And that live show we're doing is right inside the Guild, basically right there where the pregame show is going to be Rugby 101 put on by New England Rugby Football Union. And we'll be there most likely with the crowd behind us. Hope there's a good crowd there at that point. And we will hopefully go live. If not, it will be posted right away so you can watch it before the game starts. Should be a lot of fun right in the crowd. And we will have a few guests, each for about 5 minutes. Still lining those up. We do have some names already. We're just hoping it works out. But either way, it's going to be a blast.
Got to keep people on their toes, right, guys? We gotta make sure that they stay tuned. And yeah, it's gonna be fun. There's gonna be some fun people we'll get to chat to Saturday morning. I'm Bill. I don't know. We've been talking about it for a long time. I'm super stoked for this. My first championship, and I'm pumped that it's kind of around our neck of the woods to get out there. I couldn't be more excited, and I'm counting down the hours, minutes, seconds until we're out there in Pawtucket.
And also, listeners, Fitzy did want to make it, but he's been in the middle of a move and he just couldn't make this trip this time. But he was invited. So if he ever says otherwise,
Yeah, it's like just some California thing, moving out, family. Like, what is that? Where's the commitment there, Fitzy?
Well, I was hoping you guys had more budget to be able to fly me out, put me at a 5-star hotel, all
Well, no,
expenses paid trip.
that budget all went. I don't know if you guys saw, but on the Fantasy Rucker show, Matt took a all expenses paid trip to Cancun apparently after his Fantasy Ruckers title that we didn't know about on the book. So that money went towards that, and now we're left to trying to scramble a way to get a Pawtucket. So no, but hey, we'll
All
miss
right.
you, Fitzy.
Yeah, let's talk about Pawtucket. Let's talk about this weekend. Ryan, let's get into it. I don't really want to talk about specific players yet, but I want to talk about numbers, okay? And what I've seen, at least in the standings and stats, this is a pretty even matchup. 12-0-5 for the Free Jacks, 11-0-6 with Houston. Points on the board, 55 and 54. Point differential, 84-93 also, and I can't read. Try, 64-68. Points, 446 to 491. This is a tight match. So what do each team have that separates them?
I mean, the storylines are fantastic going into this one, right? Like New England having the opportunity to three-peat, just the dominance that they've displayed year in and year out, the consistency that they've displayed year in and year out. And when everyone doubts them at times, right? There were times in this season where we were like, oh, I don't know if this is New England of the same. They don't look just as strong. Maybe this is the year where they get toppled and somehow they find a way to win. And that was kind of exemplified through their match against Chicago, right? Like I would say that Chicago overall, I think a lot of people would say played a better 80 minutes, right? But the Free Jacks, when it mattered most, and taking advantage of Chicago not being able to capitalize on opportunities, when you don't put away a team like the New England Free Jacks who have the experience that they have to win matches when they matter most, they find themselves in another MLR final. So that's the storyline coming from New England side. Houston, I think we forget just where the Houston SaberCats came from, right? Like we're talking about a team when this league in the early stages of it, when we were first starting our show, especially, like Houston was at the bottom. Like this was the Anthem Rugby Carolina per se of Major League Rugby. Winless season, I believe, or at least a season that they definitely want to forget about, which I put at the back of my mind now. And look at them now, right? They're in their first ever MLR Championship. So you got almost the experience versus the non-experience, which is going to set up for what should be a very polarizing final here on Saturday.
Now, not to toot my own horn, but if you go back to the MLR Weekly's MLR preview show, Matt McCarthy, the host, asked me and Brian Ray who we thought was going to represent the Western Conference in the MLR final. And I, with my astute insight and knowledge of Major League Rugby, circled on and selected the Houston SaberCats. Go back and rewind the tape, you'll see. But anyway, one thing, Ryan, that I wanted, hence me being in the Fantasy MLR Championship for the second straight year, only losing because of collusional efforts by the commissioner's team. But this isn't about me and Ryan. What I wanted to talk about, Ryan, particularly as it relates to kind of fantasy too, is just both teams are missing some star power. So there's some key players that both teams had to do without at different points throughout the season. Of course, New England with their fly half, Jason Patros, who missed a good stretch, then came back and unfortunately had a season-ending knee injury. And then, of course, Houston SaberCats fly half, David Kutzer. Not sure his status. He may be available for this final, probably not. But Sam Tuafua, he's been out since week 14. Let's talk about that, Ryan. Are these different teams since they haven't been able to have the services of, say, a Patros or a Kutzer?
What stands out to me, right, is I think the very reason why we're seeing these two teams in the final here is also the very reason that they've been able to make it with some of those big names out, right? Like I think that's a testament to just these programs being able to stay in it despite having some losses. Every team, right, throughout the season, Major League Rugby is a grueling season, right? No team goes without getting unscathed to their starting lineup. It's how do you stay resilient in those facts? And I really do think that these two teams when you reflect on that and look back on the season, have been the best at doing that. They are some of the deepest teams. They have guys that will step up in positions when you lose a guy like Potros and John Poland not being available, and on Houston's side of things, Tuifua, David Kutzer. Like, you have guys like AJ Alatimu who come in, right? You have guys on New England's side, that come in. Cam Norley-Kelemetti looked fantastic, during the Chicago game. You just have guys that step up, and it almost feels, to a sense, especially on the New England side of things, where it really doesn't matter who they put in that starting 15 or who's coming off the bench. You're almost scared of the New England Free Jacks, emblem. You're like, okay, it doesn't matter what lineup they're putting out there, whether it's a Jason Potros or a Dan Hollinshead that they signed midway through the season. Somehow, just the way they play is just so resilient. Again, reflective of how they played against Chicago. And on Houston's side of things, they just had guys step up, like AJ Alatimu coming through. Obviously, a massive pickup. A lot of people were talking about the redundancy of having Kutzer and Alatimu, right? But now, with that injury, they're quite happy that they have a guy like Alatimu at their disposal. So again, I think to that point, yes, you could say, oh, like, man, these guys made it here without their star players. But I think on the flip side, it's like, yeah, that's why they're here, because they were the best at staying resilient and being able to navigate the waters that makes Major League Rugby so tough in terms of the grueling season and how long it is.
Who's a bigger loss, Davey Kotzer or Jason Potros?
We had this exact same question on the show this week. We came to a consensus that just based on the dynamic play, I think Davey Kutzer is the bigger loss when it comes to that. What he is able to do on the pitch is pretty incredible. But the thing is, where you can then get into the argument is, you have an AJ Alatimu stepping in behind Davey Kutzer, right? So the loss and discrepancy in skill, I think, between Alatimu and Kutzer versus Potros and Hollinshead is a lot bigger. But Kutzer just has that ability to really do anything at any moment. He could bust out for that 80-meter try and, have that. And you're not going to get that with Potros. Potros is a fantastic player, one of the best in Major League Rugby. But from a game-changing perspective, Kutzer is the guy that I'd be missing if I didn't have him in my lineup for sure. But hard question. You'd go either way, though. That's a tough one, man.
Well, I'm going to go Potros on that one. Anyway, all right, let's talk about difference makers on these squads. And we just talked about the people, who are out, who could make an impact. But let's talk about the difference makers. You mentioned Alatimu having a great year, all-time playoff scorer. Akina's playing great at center. McLean's having a great season at wing. And you got New England. I mean, Balakana on my list is shortlisted for Player of the Year, especially after that tackle on Bryce Campbell last weekend. Phenomenal. And of course, there's other names in there. I think Joe Johnson came back and had a great year as captain for the Free Jacks. Brock Webster, the tiny guy, the Welker of the New England Free Jacks, or now they're Reese, not necessarily Reese. And then Jeb Melvin comes in and has shined also. So who are the difference makers in these teams?
That is also, you have the interesting question. Obviously, the answers that everyone's wanting to know, but this is what makes it so dynamic, right? This final bill is because you're eliminating some of those all-star big names, right? Like, I think a lot of people will draw to the fact that Paula Balikana is the guy that most people will have their eyes on, just with the way that he's been playing, especially towards the latter half of this year. You look at what he's been able to do at the course of this season in terms of rounding out the year with, I think, 6 tries in the last like four or five matches, right? Like, that's incredible. And then you talk about that ability that he had to change the game. Like we talked about it on the Fantasy Rucker show. Had Paula Balikana not stopped that try, that could have been a completely different game. Yeah. And that might have been the blow that Chicago needed to keep the foot on the pedal, get it going. So obviously, from an offensive standpoint and from a defensive standpoint, Balikana is proving that he is that difference maker. Outside of that, though, I'll throw it to you guys. Like, who stands out to you? And these are just teams that play very well cohesively. And for me, there's no one outside of maybe Balikana that really necessarily stands out from the rest. Yes, Alatimu is a fantastic player, all-time point scorer. fantastic, right? But again, he's not necessarily the focal point of that offense and the focal point of that team. He's a cog that makes Houston work, right? But there are so many other pieces and part of that. And I think that's what makes this so fascinating, is that both teams are like that, right? They just have a lot of very, very good players. And I think we're going to see a really, really interesting dynamic when it comes to full team efforts on both of these sides. So maybe that's a cop-out. I would say the biggest difference maker in this game is Balikana, but I am very interested to see just the team play on both these sides, because there really isn't anyone that completely stands out from the rest, maybe a bit. To give you a New England name, I'll be watching Vian Conradi, because obviously he's a fantastic player, but that whole back row room in New England is fantastic. That's why it's not like, oh, there's one guy and a bunch of worse. They're just all very, very good. That back room is Vian Conradi, Jed Melvin, Joe Johnson. That's incredible, right? Like, they're just all very good.
Yeah. Well, Fitzy, actually, Fitz, let's talk to you. What do you think? Which players do you think out there is like, if that guy has good game, whatever else, that team is a better team?
Yeah. A little background noise going on right now. There's a lot going on. We've got a plumber here. Working on some
They're
stuff.
excited for the championship too. I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I don't blame them.
I think it's interesting how the two teams have been constructed. I like what Houston has done. They've got a few players who've been selected for the January tour, or the July test here. Houston has 3, New England has 1. Of course, New England's being Caleb Geiger, who, I mean, he's probably up there in terms of crossover player, right? When you look at Caleb Geiger, impressive human being, and he's turned into a really strong rugby player. Interesting selection, on the Houston side. With McLean, who's now gained domestic eligibility for the men's Eagles, and the checkered past that he has had. Some people are saying, well, he deserves a second chance. Others saying not. So it'll be an interesting clash between the two. There's a couple of players, and a lot of it's coming down to injury. Seth Smith has been such a fun young player to watch. He's been out for a bit, unlikely to play, unfortunately. I like Pono Davis. He's another crossover athlete. We chatted with Pono Davis a few weeks back, American football player. It was funny. He grew up in Hawaii and never seen or had played rugby until he got over here. So some exciting stuff. I think on New England side, I've always been a big fan of how Vian Conradi has played and the way he carries himself. He's a fun player to watch, and great to see him come back from his ACL injury. Bill, I'm going to toss it back to you.
Okay. I'm the same way. So for these teams, Paula, obviously, I'm right there with him. However, like Paula and Joe Johnson, if you watch the last couple matches, they've done some silly Like, there have been some hits off ball. There's been some shoulder checks where I thought for sure they're getting yelled and they're getting out of there. They didn't get it. They got warnings. So you gotta be careful going to these matches. You can't do that stuff and risk being out of the match for at least 10 minutes. 2 players of the Free Jacks, I think Brock Webster really can make a difference. There was a try called back against Miami he had, which was phenomenal. His quickness, kind of looped around, caught the ball, and it was called back for another reason. But him, and then also their scrum half, I thought, has had a really good season. Cam Kelametti, he's had a great job filling in for their full time for Poland, and it's just been phenomenal. So, and in Houston, like Fitzy said, I like Smith. I don't know. I guess he's not going to be playing, but I think he's really improved as a young player at hooker coming off the bench. And they got so much talent that at the beginning of the year when we did our draft, I thought, well, there's no way they're not winning. I mean, they've lost too many players to LA, whatever else. So I'm happy for Houston to be in there. Of course, I'm happy for New England to be there. And side note, at that Chicago match, and I feel horrible for Hilsenbeck. He's a quality player, had a great season. And you all know I'm a Free Jacks fan. I would have been happy for Chicago. I would have been happy to see them play this weekend because that's a good team. And I felt a little bad for them for that whole reason. And then I also had a heart attack when the camera feed went out. But what happened? All right. With that said, Ryan, certainly New England kind of has a home field advantage. Wouldn't you say so?
I don't think I would say just maybe. I would say it is going to be bumping for New England. And that's one of the things I'm excited about for us to be able to go. Like, what is that atmosphere going to be like? And I think that's going to play a huge part. I think Houston has to go into this understanding they are entering enemy territory. This is an away game. I mean, we've talked with people, right? Like Jack's Rangers, like the whole New England fan group, they've already got a section booked out, and this was even before New England even knew, right? Even before New England knew that they were going to be in the final, right? And I can only imagine maybe some people making some last minute trip plans to say, hey, you know what, we can get out there and location in a location benefit, right? Like, you understand, Bill, like it's a hop and a skip away for you to get there, right? So certainly a little bit further of a drive for Houston SaberCats fans. I do know some SaberCats fans that are going to be making the trip, but I don't think it's going to be as many
Stephen
people
Lowen.
as Stephen Lowen. He will be all of the Houston SaberCats fans out there.
Go,
but
Steven.
no, I mean, it's going to be rocking for New England. The red, white, and blue is going to be packing that house, and yeah, it's going to make it already tough for what is, according to the sports books, a favorite leaning towards the New England Free Jacks here, and the home field advantage is only going to play more into that favor.
It is interesting that the Free Jacks the last 2 or 3 years, 2 years, they have not been favorites going into the
Is that so? Is that so? Oh, interesting. Yeah. Plus, 4.5 favorites going into this one. So I guess they're making up for some of the past years.
All right, Ryan, you ready to make a score prediction? Who's winning this thing?
Oh, is that what we're doing here? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
I haven't made any official predictions yet,
But you will now. So thank you.
I will say that my confidence lies the most in Houston right now. With the way that Houston played against the Utah Warriors, the dominant form that they showed, it has me really, really confident in what they're going to be able to do. Again, we talked about the home crowd. That's going to be tough. We talked about the resiliency of the New England Free Jacks. That's going to be tough. What's going to happen, I think, in my opinion, is Houston needs to put the pedal down right from the get-go. If Houston goes up by a couple scores, they are not going to be the same team that Chicago was and allow New England to get back on it. Houston is one of the best teams in the entire league at controlling the game. And you'll see glimpses of their play style last year where they can smash. They have that dynamicness that they've added to their roster this year, where they have this back three line that can kill you. Their centers are fast, but they can also resort to what their identity was last year and just slowing it down, smashing you in the mouth. The rugby that not a lot of people like to watch on TV, but nonetheless can be very successful. So if that can happen, I think Houston has a good chance of winning this one. But again, you can never count New England out. I've been a person that has done that this year, and I've been proven wrong multiple times. And I'm going to go into this one knowing that New England has every shot, and there's a reason why they're favorites heading into this one. So I don't know if that's a political answer, but my confidence lies very much so with the Houston SaberCats as of right now.
He asked for a score.
You picked who you think is win. That works. Unless Bill want to hold him.
It will be a low scoring game. I think it's going to be a defensive battle.
All right, so 9-5.
No, I hope not. For all our sakes, I hope not 9-5.
Fitzy, your take.
Yeah, I think Ryan's pretty spot on there. You saw a New England side where if you don't slam the door shut, if you even leave it open just a crack, like Chicago couldn't finish there, New England's going to find a way to claw it back in, get the home crowd in it, and then voice their sails a little bit and come back and win. That's just certainly the game plan. I think it might be flipped the other way. I think I see New England getting home field advantage, getting out to early, carrying that through maybe into the 65th, 70th minute. Houston stays close, keeps clawing, keeps punching. I think a little bit more physical side. I think when the reserves come on, I think Houston wins this one in a little bit of a squeaker. I think it will be. I think we will see some points on the board. I think there's some dynamic playmakers on both sides. Could set up for some running rugby. I think it'll be like a third. I'm going to go 31-28 Houston.
Nicely done. All right, and same sentiment as all you. I totally agree about all that. New England's going to have a lot of fans in the crowd. For those who've ever been to Quincy, it's a pretty loud crowd, a very loud crowd. So if they get even half of those fans to Pawtucket, it's going to help out the Free Jacks. And I do think it's going to be late in the match. I'm going to actually be really specific. It's going to be 27-27 late. And New England scores a late try, unconverted, to win the match.
So let me ask a follow-up question then, Bill and Ryan, real quickly. Should New England win, I'm going to throw out that D word, dynasty. Should this three-peat, if it happens, should this be considered a dynasty for the New England Free Jacks?
Absolutely. Yeah, no question. No question. You could argue that it's already a dynasty, honestly.
Early dynasty, right?
Yeah. Whether I've always had this, and it's funny, this conversation has gone around. And I feel like the dynasty word has come up a lot lately, but 3 is hands down. If you can win 3 in a row, that's special stuff. And it goes right up there. I know it's not the same powerhouse as maybe the core 4 sports that we typically turn on a sports evening, but nonetheless, got to give kudos to Free Jacks. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I think it's going to be close. And just to correct your score there, Bill, I hope it's a penalty. If New England does win, I hope it's a penalty kick, not a try, so that my bet still wins and I can end up winning the gift or better challenge. 4.5 point spread is the key here.
All right. Listen, those of you who did not catch earlier, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, myself, Fantasy Ruckers, and American Rugby Rising will be in Pawtucket live Friday night at the Guild, hanging out. Come
grab yourself a jersey.
We got shirts to hang out. We got stuff. We got tickets to game, USA Eagles games at Jersey. Saturday morning, we're live. We're doing a live podcast in the Guild with the fans all around us. Come out and say hello, yell at us, buy us a pint. It's okay. We're looking forward to. Please come say hello. We don't bite. We actually would love to meet all of you that have been listening to the show and to Fancy Ruckers as well. Ryan E., thanks, man. Thanks for the input, and looking forward to seeing you in a couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely, man. See everyone else. Also, hopefully out in Pawtucket, and happy and pumped for an MLR Championship weekend. That should be very exciting. It's gonna be great.
Good weather too. Hopefully. Okay. Cheers, man. See you.
Cheers.
And there it is. We have recapped 2 championship matches, Fitzy. How you feeling?
Can it be Saturday and Sunday already?
I'm excited. I'm really excited to be at the game. I'm sorry you can't be there, but it's going to be a fun game. It's just nice to be at the finals either way, and there's a big pub not far from the stadium where they're doing all the fan fest. I mean, they're not doing.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool that you and Ryan and Matt have been able to get involved and be part of the process, and MLR has encouraged or invited other media to be part of the fan fest, and so that's really neat to see. Kudos to Major League Rugby for letting you yokels get on the mics there.
Oh, we're extremely honored that they're putting us in there, and we went back and forth about locations. We wanted to be at the stadium, we wanted to be here, whatever else, and at some point I was like, why am I pushing my luck here? And then because I took so long to nail it down, we didn't get into the official, schedule. So it says Rugby 101 and then the pregame show, and so we would have put us in the middle right there. But it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. But it's blast, can be fun, and a new experience, and also a test for when you and I go on the road for Happy Hour Live.
Let's go. Let's do it. Yeah.
Yes. All right, man. Thanks, man. Fitzy, good to see you, and we will chat again soon.
Sounds good. Cheerio.